You're listening to the NCF&B podcast, part of the OG Podcast Network. The NCF&B podcast takes you behind the scenes of North Carolina's food and beverage industry. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at NCFBpod. This episode sponsored in part by Food Scene. That's foodseen.com, providing professional photography, social media management, video production, and website design. And now, enjoy the show.
Thank you for listening to the NCF&B podcast. I am your co-host, Max Trujillo.
And I am your co-host, Matthew Weiss. And today in the studio, we have one of Raleigh's own, the infallible chef of Bernadin, Chef Sean Fowler.
Great to be here, guys. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Hey, you asked us if we had radio experience. Listen to that voice.
I know. Dulcet tones.
Yeah.
You can broadcast something going out on the pass, you know, like, oh, and the plate goes down, and now here for the garnish.
And can I get a runner? And it's off. Table 53.
And he'll be there.
They look hungry.
No, of course, we're speaking about getting that food to the table in a quick fashion.
Yeah, a little industry lingo.
Yeah. Well, and that would be happening at your restaurant,
Right.
Bernadin, which is out there, ITB, inside of the Beltline of Raleigh, but most notably kind of like in your hood, right, where you grew up as a kid?
I did. Well, actually, my business partner, Haynes Roberts, he was from that neighborhood, so I spent a lot of time over there. I actually grew up in North Raleigh, off Durant Road.
Jeez.
I know.
How could you?
So I'm a total fraud, but
that's all right.
But yeah, Raleigh native, grew up in the area, went to Ravenscroft off Falls of the Neuse Road, and lived
By the way,
for most of my life.
Does Ravenscroft, I've been wondering now for the almost 2 years that I've lived here, no connection to J.K. Rawlings or Harry Potter? I mean, it's not Ravenscroft, but it's
Ravensclaw, isn't it?
A Ravensclaw, yeah.
Yeah. I'm not a dork. I don't know.
J.K. Rowling, she bit everything else she wrote, so like she must have just taken the name from some school, from some private
She
school.
must have spent some time in Raleigh. Yeah,
why not?
Exactly.
Did you wear robes at Ravensclaw?
They were optional. No dress code, but robes. They were preferred robes.
Yeah. No, but the lore, the story does go, and this one has been told many times, so I'm not telling anybody. But the cool circle of life thing, where you were at where Bernadin is now was actually a pharmacy which served food, and you're famously known for, I guess, drinking a lot of limeade and eating grilled cheeses there as a kid.
There you go. Yeah. My buddy's house was on Harvey Street, and we used to ride our bikes all over that neighborhood. And there was a pharmacy there called Johnson's Pharmacy with the old, kind of the traditional lunch counter with, serving grilled cheeses and kind of the soda fountain.
Kind of like the beginning of what Person Street Pharmacy is now.
Exactly. And there were a handful of them in that neighborhood where, at 5 Points, I think Hayes Barton Pharmacy was there. There was Johnson's Pharmacy. I want to say there was even another one. A lot of people that grew up in that Hayes Barton 5 Points neighborhood have a strong connection with Johnson's Pharmacy because they would go to Daniels Middle School. Then all the kids would, cycle up to Johnson's Pharmacy and, buy candy and steal magazines or whatever middle school kids do.
Wouldn't you get like a milkshake or a malted?
Yeah, they did have milkshake.
This is in 1953.
This is like Back to the Future, and Biff came by with the horse manure in the truck.
Sean and his buddies would like roll down with a stick and a hoop, and he'd just be
a peach basket. A peach basket.
Hey, sir, extra, read all about it. Yeah. I think I had a neighborhood place. It was called 7-Eleven. We used to play Street Fighter, and my next door neighbor, Shannon, would have to buy his mom's Marlboro cigarettes, and she would give him a note. He's like 11 years old, and
like my son is allowed
my
to.
My son can buy me Marlboro cigarettes. So she'd give us like an extra few quarters so that our journey to get her cigarettes, we could also play some Street Fighter. And that's just life growing up. That's what we did.
Yeah, that was nice.
So, and I got something to say about 5 points.
Yes.
It's 6 points.
It is 6 points.
It's kind of BS.
That is a very astute observation.
It is six.
It is absolutely 6 points.
And one could almost say 7 points.
I want to say one of those points was probably a latecomer to the game.
Right.
I don't know this, but that would be my
Like it started
guess
out
is
as
that
5
at some
points.
point it was 5 points.
Essentially, you have 3 streets that are meeting. So
Correct.
Last I checked, when you multiply 3 by 2, it's 6.
Your math is correct. Yes.
Okay, yeah.
So
I'm like,
my guess is that the 6 point came later, and they just kept the name because it was easier than trying to retrain people.
yeah.
It's like if we decided to switch to the metric system, people's brains would explode.
Royale with cheese.
Royale with cheese. Yeah. Well, I've known you kind of, like I feel since I've moved here, and even in doing research. So Mandolin opened up in 2011, I believe.
That's correct.
Yeah.
November of 2011.
It was like the day before Thanksgiving of that year.
Yeah, right around there. Yeah, I think you're right.
What are you thinking? Let's open up the day before a national holiday.
Man, after you're doing build out for a restaurant and trying to staff it, as soon as the ducks are in a row, I mean, I was ready to go.
So wait, were you open Thanksgiving Day?
No, we closed Thanksgiving.
Okay, so you opened for a day and then immediately closed.
That might be right. I'll trust your research. I don't remember. It's a blur.
Our research department did a lot of effort.
No, there was an article famously written, I think, in the NNO or something about
It was the Walter.
the Walter magazine about you guys hosting a dinner for friends as a tradition on Thanksgiving. So then it must have been the next day.
That
you
sounds
opened.
about right. Then, yeah.
And I think
yeah.
Alex Cast was one of the guys.
Yeah,
that's part of
Alexander
that,
was with us,
which is Max Cast's brother.
correct. Yep.
Yeah.
And Cheryl Ann, who I worked with at Fearrington when she was still in the kitchen, is his wife, and she was also my wife's maid of honor in our wedding. So her and Lizzie are good friends, and Alexander and I have known each other for years, and been buddies with Max and Crystal. So
Yeah, I think through all this time I've never met Alexander, but I know of him, and he's doing some cheese.
He is. I think he's at Chapel Hill Creamery right now. So,
Very cool.
really smart, sharp guy.
His brother
Good.
Max, of course, is former guest on the show and is an encyclopedia of knowledge in the wine industry.
Yeah,
so that was fun.
Super sharp, knowledgeable guy. Yeah, like that.
And so you have a really strong connection to the Fearrington House because, and we can kind of go through the whole storyline of where you've been. But at one point, after leaving Johnson & Wales, maybe a small stint at Le Bernadin, I think for a short time.
Correct. Yeah.
Then brings you back to your native North Carolina. You'd been around a few other places too. We can get into that, but you spent some time as the catering chef at the Fearrington House.
That's right. Correct? Yeah, when I was moving back to Raleigh from New York and just kind of looking at the food scene, places I would like to work, and Fearrington obviously jumped out at me.
Yeah.
Kind of still trying to hone my craft and gain some experience in a good solid high-end kitchen, and Fearrington fit the bill. Relais and Chateau, great reputation, good property. So I applied for a line cook position there, got hired on the line at the house under Chef Graham Fox at the time.
Graham Fox,
Colin's predecessor, and then just kind of moved my way up through the ranks. I think I worked about every station in that kitchen, including pastry, and then the catering chef gig became available. And wasn't necessarily number one on my list of things to do coming from a restaurant background, but I figured it'd be a good experience, good one for the resume. And if nothing else, catering gets you very organized, get you get your fingers in the finances of running a food operation. And
one has to think too that catering at Fearrington is going to be wildly different than say catering at a Hilton, downtown Hilton, where it's like chicken or fish, but the set is the exact same thing. I imagine there was some pretty high-end technique going on, even on the catering side.
It was. The food was pretty similar to what was coming out of the house kitchen. Probably not quite as intricate as involved, but everything was a la minute cooking, a la minute plating. We were, assembly line, assembling plates. You got out of the kitchen, we weren't throwing stuff in hot boxes to sit there for 2 hours. Or
a la minute, for those that understand, meaning made in the moment, not made that minute or whatever, but as opposed to pre-baking, prefabbing, and then just heating up.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's interesting. We talked with Blake Gottliff of Under the Oak Farms, who was starting his own catering company, and he was saying that he basically cut it off at 120, something like that, 150, because he said above that I can't do the kind of food that I would be proud of. So that's, I assume, what was probably going on in a similar way to the Fearrington. Of course, you had a kitchen on site, so possibly the numbers get a little larger there. But.
Right. With plated dinners, I think we would probably max out around 200, something like that. And then we would also do buffets and heavy hors d'oeuvres. And for those, I mean, I think the biggest thing we probably did about 600 for like a buffet. But buffets are buffets.
Thinking of places to get married, I can't think of a better place than Fearrington. That sounds like a commercial right now, but but seriously, like that whole village is pretty awesome. And if you could get like your family, your wedding party to stay there for the weekend, and you're out in this like beautiful farm ranch, you got goats running around and all, like it's perfect.
Yeah,
that's ideal.
It really is. And Lizzie and I, that's where me and my wife met. She was managing one of the retail stores out there. So we have obviously a pretty fond spot in our hearts for Fearrington. I spent about 7 years out there. So, but when you're in it, wherever you're working, I think you kind of lose sight of the magical quality and all that.
Because you know what the employee break room looks like.
Exactly. You're aware of the seedy underbelly. Not that Fearrington has a seedy underbelly, but you kind of get desensitized to the beauty and the magic of it. But having gone out there since we've left, it kind of rekindles it's a beautiful spot. It's kind of very idyllic. And
well, thinking of like romance and all that, talk to us how you spent company time and money wooing your now wife. I don't want to incriminate myself too much on the air, but I probably statute of limitations.
I probably did make some potato leek soup on the company dime and delivered it to her on a nice rainy day. I think that was the icebreaker that kind of got the foot in the door. And there might have been some pastries, confections after that were making their way over to the
chef's got game, man. If a chef can just throw it down, it's so easy to be like, oh, hey, by the way, I made this soup for you.
Yeah, it's like food is the way to the woman's heart.
And she wasn't too proud or too dainty to ask for extra bread. So she was like, "That's only 2 pieces of bread. I think I can get a little more bread."
And right there, you're
absolutely,
like,
so I'm prepared to open a restaurant in North Raleigh, in ITV. I'm just kidding. She set me up
seriously
for the high demands.
Right.
Wasn't it that weren't you supposed to actually go out on a date with her before then you actually showed up with the soup?
You guys have really done some research.
We get the
I don't even know where you guys got that. But well, it was unbeknownst to me. It was actually Cheryl Ann, Alexander Cass' wife, was having, I believe, a birthday party, and we were both invited, and I think it was Cheryl's ploy to kind of get us in the same room and see what happened.
Gotcha.
She was introducing the ingredients and seeing if they melded, and so anyways, and I got the date for the party wrong and did not show up, and I didn't even know that there was this potential matchmaking going on. So I was just like, so I missed your party. Sorry, Cheryl. And evidently, Lizzie had gone out and gotten a new dress and was there expecting to meet me and felt very snubbed, even though
it's like, damn, this guy.
I was totally unaware that she was going to be there, nor that she was expecting me to be there. So, so our first potential meeting was didn't happen because of my absent-mindedness.
Okay, but then you were kind of smitten anyway.
and but I had my eye on her. I knew who she was, and then I did the rest of the work myself.
So
we like the love corner over here. We like talking like that.
Lesson learned. Yeah, if you're trying to be a matchmaker, or if they say it in Yiddish, as Maxwell knows now, it's called the shidduch. You make 3 of them, you go straight to heaven in Jewish lore. But
so Cheryl Ann's got one down.
Yeah, Cheryl Ann's got one down. But I think that's the best way. Is like have 2 people at a party. Don't let them know, but. Lesson learned, make sure that each person knows the right date and they're showing up. So.
Yeah, exactly. So then after that, obviously, I brought her some soup and asked her out on a date, and the rest is history. Now we have 2-year-old twin girls.
We partnered up with Triangle Wine Company because these guys are awesome. They offer weekly wine tasting events, a wide range of wine and beers from around the world, and an easy online store to find the wines that you'd like. They also offer pickup, local delivery, and shipping. We even set up a promo code NCFB so you can receive 10% off all future purchases.
Go to trianglewineco.com or one of their 3 locations, and for $99, pick up the NCFNB 6-pack, which includes 3 white wines, 3 red wines, and we threw an official NCFNB hat in the bag.
So once again, buy your wine online or in-store at the Triangle Wine Company and use our promo code NCFB during checkout to receive 10% off your future wine and beer purchases. Go to trianglewineco.com or click the top of our website at ncfbpodcast.com.
I was going to say, now you have twins. I crack up because we're Facebook friends. I see pictures of you guys hanging out, and there's so many pictures that come to mind. One, the Halloween Royal Tenenbaums.
Right.
You all in your tracksuits. They got the red tracksuits with the curly hair, all identical. And then I said to Felicia, my wife, when I looked at your newborn photos, like when you were putting them out, and I just looked and went, oh my God, those are Sean Fowler's children. Like, the
unmistakable.
You got some strong DNA going on out there.
Yeah, no doubt about it. They're definitely my kids. They're starting to look more like their mother, thankfully.
Good.
I would not wish this face on those girls for the rest of their life. So hopefully their likeness will start to assemble to their mothers more and more. But
that's a huge dynamic change, and we've had conversations like with Mike Lee being, a chef, and then also family being very important to him, and obviously your family line, and you have a very strong family, the Fowlers in general in Raleigh, and now you have these children. It always just begs the question: what's the best thing to eat at the Golden Corral?
Golden Corral, that's tough. You ask the kids, and they're probably going to go towards the sweet side. They do have that chocolate fountain, the chocolate wonderfall,
yes.
which is. It's almost like dirty pool when marketing to kids because the kids cannot stay away from it. And
you put all the candy at the eyesight level for the kids.
There's marshmallows going in there. There's cookies going in there, strawberries, whatever. So I think that's what the kids like. I personally. I think their pot roast is really good.
That's right.
Their pot roast holds up. I mean, it's a good product. I like their mac and cheese is good, and their fried chicken's pretty phenomenal.
So a lot of people are probably wondering when they're listening to this, why are we talking about Golden Corral on this episode? And so I think that your family, obviously, your father was running Golden Corral as CEO for 25 years as a part of it. For
over 30 years.
Over 30 years.
So he was, James Maynard. Another Raleighite was the founder, him and a gentleman by the name of Bill Carl, who's since passed, and they started it in Jacksonville, North Carolina. That was the first restaurant
out on the coast.
That's right, yeah, Eastern North Carolina. And my dad was running kind of a 24-hour type of. It was called Sambo's, but it was essentially like a Denny's almost.
I remember Sambo's, yeah.
And this big national chain at the time. So he was managing. He was kind of an owner, partner, manager of one of those in Dallas, which is where my sister was born, and then got the call from some of these Golden Corral guys who were trying to recruit talent, poach talent, and some of his some of the guys he knew from Sambo's were moving to Golden Corral, so he made the move to North Carolina and started working for James Maynard, and just kind of worked his way up through the ranks and became the president of the company. Was with Golden Corral for pretty much his entire career, 30 plus years.
He essentially defined it as what most people recognize Golden Corral.
Sure, initially it was
this last 20 years of Golden Corral, that's been your dad,
right? At first it started off kind of just steakhouse. You would order at the counter, a waitress would bring you a cut of steak and a potato or fries, and as America's palate and as dining changed, they saw this potential for these salad bars, and essentially created kind of through several incarnations and a kind of a longer evolution, these massive buffet restaurants that we now know as Golden Corral.
Yeah. It's pretty interesting. I didn't really have and sometimes like you get lost in what local people talk about and you don't have the national perspective. But being from New York, I was listening to a New York radio feed, the ESPN New York guys, and there was an ad on there for Golden Corral. So you forget that it is a national chain, even though it's based in Raleigh, North Carolina, and was originated here.
Yeah, like totally geeky. I think there's like 502 locations. Not that I would have known. But there are 48 in North Carolina.
Right.
There are 9 in California. I check because that's where I'm from. And then almost every major state has them. It's like 66 in Texas, which is, I guess, with the whole steak thing that kind of goes well. Mm-hmm. And then New York's had like 12. So they're definitely well represented all over. And then, of course, in most states, there's a Golden Corral somewhere. So I'm sure anyone listening to the show is well aware of Golden Corral. They've been around for a while.
Right.
But so okay, but your dad, he was running a restaurant, like a diner style, obviously like not high level cuisine, but still in the restaurant industry. Then comes to more, how does this work? Is he boots on the ground running a few smaller locations and then becomes an exec, or did he come in to be like more of an exec level?
And I should probably know more about this history than I do, but essentially started out as a regional supervisor. So gotcha. He had and I don't even know how many stores he had under his umbrella, but was responsible for a region, let's say 8 stores, 10 stores, something like that was his territory. And then I think James and the other powers that be saw talent in him and saw ambition and kind of qualities they were looking for to kind of move up the chain. And as the company was in a period of extended growth, so as they were growing, they needed more people, upper management. And I think, became, vice president, president. And then I think they were starting to shop outside of the house to see if they, there was somebody who could come in and fill the, he's either president or CEO position. And my dad kind of threw his name in the hat and he was like, hey, I'm here. I know how this business runs. And James Maynard took a chance on my dad, and
that's cool.
kind of, leap of faith. And I think it's worked out well for both of them and have had a, lifelong, friendship and business relationship. And that's another cool thing about this, about that company is the length of employees that they've retained. Like a lot of those guys have been over there, 25, 30 years.
Right. Which always speaks highly for a company.
Yeah. Good family culture, lots of philanthropy. They do a lot of good stuff for the communities they're in. So I think, it's a pretty strong, pretty strong company. I think a testament to James Maynard's vision and then also just the kind of the character, corporate culture, if you will.
Yeah. So which that's important. Not that we're going to talk about the menu or the food choices at Golden Corral because it's a little bit far from what we talk about more often here. But obviously, I assume it had some serious influences on your career and your visions on how to run a restaurant and how to be successful. I mean, you talked about your catering background and how that gets you organized, but I'm sure you learned and just by association some ways to how to run a restaurant, how to run a kitchen from watching your dad and being involved in that.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, if anything, it made me not want to go into the restaurant business for years.
Yeah.
Kind of, trying to, forge your own path, not wanting to do what my dad did.
Had you ever pulled any shifts at the Golden Corral, like when you were a kid, teenager, or anything?
And I never worked at Golden Corral. No, I didn't. My sister did. But no, I never did. My first job was washing dishes at an Italian restaurant off of, I think, either Atlantic or Millbrook called G. Luigi's, no longer there. But when I was 16, so my first job was in a restaurant, and I worked in restaurants, high school, college, after college. So, I mean,
yeah.
But I think in the back of my head, I was like, I'm going to have another career. This probably isn't what I'm going to wind up doing.
Matt, could you imagine though, like you're an employee, you're like a line cook at Golden Corral, and then Fowler's son, Sean, does get a job there. He's like 16 and he's like working on the line, and you're just the whole time going, God damn it, man. Now I got to show up on time every day.
Oh, right, because he's going to rat me out.
I got to do all this stuff because the bosses. So, I worked for the Jackson family for 4 years, Kendall Jackson.
Yeah.
And the CEO of the company, who famously went on Undercover Boss. He's actually a really cool dude, Rick Tigner. He went on... and it's a pretty interesting episode. You got like the handlebar mustache and like shaved his head and looked like a dude. And he's a kind of a handsome man in general, but like he looked like a trucker, and he's sure enough driving the trucks with the guys as like a trainee. And everyone's like, "Who's this guy?" And then at the end, of course, he's like, "Oh, by the way, I run the company." But the funny part about it is he has a son, and his son was working as like a junior sales rep. And every now and then, like he'd be in my car, and I'd have to drive him around. I'm like, "Oh man, like I got to be really on my game today. I got to sell some wine." He'd be like, "Yeah, Dad, that one guy in Santa Monica, he sucks.
Yeah,
get rid of that dude." But anyhow, random sidebar.
Right.
You didn't do that. You didn't make his employees feel uncomfortable.
No, I chose not to kind of stay out of the Golden Corral family and kind of do my own thing. So I worked at, I did work at restaurants, and I don't.
You were a ski bum for a little while, right?
I was.
A good place to be a ski bum in Jackson Hole, Wyoming.
I dare say that probably one of the best places to be a ski bum in the lower 48, anyways. But so yeah, I mean, I went to college. Got a history degree, liberal arts college, and Washington Lee University in Western Virginia. So a good school. Most of my peers were either going to law school or going into finance. So being a history major, I thought law school, but by the end of my 4 years, I didn't know what I wanted to do, but it certainly wasn't going to law school.
Yeah.
So, I didn't think that, the world needed me as a lawyer. So, I did think the world needed me to be skiing in Jackson Hole, however. So I hopped over to
those moguls aren't going to make themselves.
Yeah, right. So I moved out there and, was skiing, fishing, climbing, doing what one does when you're living in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, and always wound up working in restaurants, first and foremost because you worked nights and you had days to ski and play. Yeah. So it was a perfect fit. And then after a few years of doing it, and I did everything from waiting tables to cooking, a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and realized that I really did have a passion for food. I liked food. I liked cooking. I liked reading about cooking. I liked I kind of took a little bit of my history interest into the kitchen and liked knowing about why people cook certain ways and kind of cultural significance of different foods and why different techniques. So that interest kind of burgeoned into a desire to go back, to go to culinary school and try and make a run out of doing it professionally.
Well, how many conversations per week was your dad during this time saying, "So, what are you going to do with yourself?"
Probably at least twice a year. But my dad, both of my parents are pretty good at being hands off. Kind of, I'll get a gentle nudge every once in a while. But even in my, most boneheaded teenage years, they kind of let me make some mistakes and learn on my own, and didn't give me a lot of unsolicited advice. Sometimes I probably deserved more than what I was getting. Sure. But even college years, doing
you got your degree, and plus Jackson Hole is not a cheap place to be, so you must have been making some money, decent money at waiting tables or doing whatever you're doing there, because also the people that visit there have some nice coin, because it's not cheap.
Yeah, no, not at all. And I've got a handful of friends who actually settled down out there. I've got a buddy who's got a couple restaurants out there, and a handful of our crew.
Ski trip. Jackson Hole.
Yeah, I got some good places for you to eat. But a handful of people wound up settling down, but most people got tired of living poor and were like, "Hey, I want to start a family." Real estate's so expensive. I mean, it's a tough place to live, and it's also it's tourism driven economy, so it's seasonal. It's kind of feast or famine. Even a lot of restaurants will shut down for 2-3 months, so you got to make your coin.
And it's hard to get in and out of there. You got to drive. The airport's an hour to 2 hours away, right?
There's one airport in Teton National Park.
Right.
I think the only direct flights are maybe Chicago, or I might. This is probably a little dated, but we're Chicago and Salt Lake. Yeah. And there's only I think maybe 6 or 7 flights in a day, just because it's in a national park, so they want to limit, air traffic over national park land. So, yeah, it's tough to get into, and then the closest airport other than that's flying into Salt Lake and driving. So it's a tough place to get to. It's but it's a really it's a special
and
place.
we like it that way.
Exactly.
I mean, it does keep it from being very commercialized.
Exactly. It's a great place if you've never been. But after working in restaurants and kind of scraping by, I realized, hey, I need to, I should probably try and make a career move here, and applied to some culinary schools. Got into Johnson and Wales in Denver, Colorado. So I wasn't ready to hop back to the East Coast, and I had some friends in Denver, Boulder area, so moved down to Boulder. Went to Johnson and Wales, got an associate's degree. So just a couple years of college. And
the food scene in Denver is pretty awesome too, and it's been like that for a while.
It was, when I was there, it was early 2000s, so it was just on the cusp. It was still kind of meat and potatoes. There were a few cool spots going in. I actually worked at a place on Pearl Street in Boulder called The Kitchen, which is kind of sprung up at kind of a mini national chain, and I think
what was it called?
The Kitchen.
The Kitchen.
And Kimball Musk was the chef owner. It was Elon Musk's brother. So he's kind of ushered in this kind of farm to table, kind of knowing where your food's grown type movement. And I think he just established a pretty big charity. So it was a cool spot to be
So
working.
wait, one guy created like a new form of energy and automotives, and he's going into space. The other guy is making sandwiches.
Basically.
But they're definitely damn good sandwiches.
Yeah, good sandwiches. But super smart guy, talented.
Just to get an idea,
chef.
because you mentioned Denver, but I feel like Boulder's a little bit more on the cutting edge as far as culinary. Like Boulder would
Maybe
be
more
at least
high-end, yeah.
perception-wise, like their Durham equivalent to Raleigh. Even though that those lines have blurred now, but
even then, I think Boulder was probably a little more progressive.
Yeah.
Some more, some
Yeah, a lot
cooler
of
ethnic offerings, and Denver was still much more kind of steakhouses, meat and potatoes type stuff. But now I think I think both have pretty vibrant, cool food scenes. A lot of cool stuff going on out there.
Hey, curious, just to take that moment back, what was there an epiphany moment, or was there like a straw that broke the camel's back where you said, okay, I'm applying to culinary school, or I'm going to culinary school? Like broken bone on the ski slope?
Or like eat at a really kick-ass restaurant and be like, I want to do this.
I think it was, I got tired of...
Just make it up, dude. Just make it up.
got tired of living paycheck to paycheck. I was like, I need to make a career. And little did I know I was still going to be a line cook and working paycheck to paycheck for another 8 or 9 years.
Yeah.
But, I just, I wanted to do something professionally, try and, create something. And, despite moving to Jackson Hole out of college, I think there was always some kind of ambition, like resting dormant there. Like I wanted to, I wanted to do something. I wanted to create something. And I had an artistic side. Like I was, I liked to paint in college. Like I was a big, I liked the visual arts. I still do. And I didn't see necessarily a viable career option with that, or, something short of being a starving artist. So I thought, in
radio host.
Well, you kind of led us down the path that I was already kind of getting at, that there was something inside you that needed to be more expressive and creative, and you didn't know exactly what it was at that point. And that's a part that, I think people can appreciate about being a chef, is that it is wildly creative, and almost every day you're having to like reinvent things, and that's what makes your dining experience for your guests attractive to them.
Absolutely. You get to use, like you said, both sides of your brain. Well put.
Hi, this is Mike Coscarelli from Anxiety Now.
And Andrea Allen from the Hot Mess Comedy Hour.
We just launched the brand new OG Podcast Network and wanted to let you know that you can hear ours and other great shows by going to ogpodcastnetwork.com.
Also, be sure to follow the network on social media to keep up to date with new shows, videos, and live events.
That's at OG Podcasts on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook.
Or you can subscribe to your favorite OG podcast wherever you get your podcasts.
So you finished Johnson & Wales.
Well, there was a New York stint.
Oh, sure, yeah.
There was. I followed that. There was a chef I was working for in Jackson Hole, opened up a spot in upstate New York in Lake George.
Oh, nice.
So kind of moved out there to help him open that. And did one winter in upstate New York, and I was like,
that was enough.
I'm good. And then had a brief stint at Bernadin. My sister was living in Westchester County at the time, so I crashed with her and commuted, and had a good run there. Learned a lot, but also realized I was not a big city fish. I was kind of. I think I was kind of jonesing to get back, south. Kind of.
What's cool though.
Home.
I don't know how long you spent at Le Bernardin, but you're quoted as saying the technique there is, and I'm paraphrasing, is of, the highest possible execution.
Right.
But the ingredients are not the same as what you get down here.
Yeah, and I'd say maybe some of the ingredients. The fish they're using at Le Bernardin is the best in the world.
Unparalleled,
they're using the best fish you can get. So
I would hope so.
Sushi restaurants otherwise. So... Yeah, that end, but I'd say New York, big cities in general, their access to produce, herbs, unique, vegetables, fruits. We live in a Garden of Eden when it comes to access to good produce, and even good pork, good poultry, good most proteins, and sure we get great fish too. We're getting nowadays we're getting great fish from the coast, whereas 10 years ago that wasn't the case. So I think their access to good ingredients is seriously limited. They don't have 24 farms within 45 minutes of their restaurant. So
Right.
everything's hitting a truck, getting shipped in. But as far as like progression of what cooking is and what it can be, and technique and attention to detail, I mean, obviously you'd be hard pressed to find a better food town than New York City.
Right.
Did you get to work with Eric Ripert at all? Like, side by side?
He was in the kitchen at the time. I think he was working on his cookbook, Return to Cooking. So he was doing kind of R&D stuff for that. But he was there, I'd say, almost every night. Not necessarily, hands-on, but occasionally, he would get in the kitchen, put his hands on some food, and pretty much whatever he did was magic.
That must have been cool.
Yeah, absolutely. And this was already kind of after his mellowing, where I think for a while he was typical hothead,
right?
French chef, and I think became an active Buddhist and kind of started meditating. And at this point, he'd already kind of mellowed. I think that kitchen was probably vastly different, a few years before I got there.
Yeah.
But it was, it was a tiny, in New York City kitchen, 24 chefs just packed in like sardines and lots
putting out world-class food.
Yeah,
literally.
but lots of egos, lots of competitive nature. Not the most
friendly
zen place to be. And
Right.
when you're working at cuisine at that level, I mean, that's a lot of it's very regimented. It's very serious. I mean, you could talk in that kitchen, but there's some kitchens where you can hear a pin drop. I mean, everybody's pretty dialed into what they're doing. I wouldn't say it was a lot of fun. Like that's not the way I would describe it. It was, I think it was, it's transformative in some ways, eye-opening, educational. I mean, there's a lot of things you get out of it.
Yeah.
But I don't think,
How does that differ from, not to jump ahead, because we'll get back to the progression along to get to Raleigh, but how does that differ from your kitchen at Mandolin today?
Well, I think when I first opened, I think it's a different kitchen now than it was then. I mean, same thing. I think I was really trying to run a tight ship. I think I was probably a little more prone to lose my temper, a little bit tougher on people.
Oh yeah, I have a whole list of things people have.
we asked them to write in a complaint list.
I had to cut it off at 150.
Yeah, right. And then over time, I think I don't know, maybe maturity on my point, maybe realizing that the best way to get the best work out of people isn't always flipping out. I mean, occasionally it is. I think occasionally a stern word for the individual. I mean, there's people learn different ways. They respond to different feedback. So some people need you to, rip them a new one every once in a while, pull them aside very directly. This is unacceptable. We're going to change this, or, we're going to have, there's going to be serious consequences. And then some people, they prefer, just mutual respect. If you tell them how to do it, show them how to do it, they show you they can do it, and they repeat it. I mean, that's, a lot of people want to be challenged, but, everybody learns differently. And I think kind of trying to tailor that to the individuals on our staff, and just realizing at the end of the day, like I'm probably not going to win a Michelin star,
Not with that attitude.
No. But, like end of the day, like that's not really why I do it anymore. I think when you're younger, there's a little more, kind of, I don't even know, a little more kind of
like perfectionism, maybe?
Exactly.
Well, one could make the argument that, if you're working in the kitchen at Le Bernadin, you're there for a real reason. Like you probably aren't even from that town.
Right.
You probably went to a lot of school. That's probably not your fifth or sixth restaurant that you've worked in. You've had some serious amount of experience being there. Whereas if you live in this state, in this city, and you're working, this could potentially be your first job you've ever had in the kitchen, or at least with a little bit of experience. And maybe your career path isn't to own and run your own restaurant. So I'm going to be really good at what I do while I'm here. But maybe someday I become a real estate agent. So that's cool too. But at least, and I'm not saying that to disparage that on anyone. It's just the perspective. Eric Ripert, or whoever is the chef at Le Bernadin at the time, can demand excellence because he knows there's like 60 people right behind them that want to be there to do that job. Here, you've got to like cultivate, and you got to inspire and teach and really like hopefully create an environment where this is an enjoyable place to work.
Yeah.
And have longevity there. So it's a
really good point. I mean, we talked restaurant owners and employers all the time who always say, especially in a market like this, I mean, Raleigh is kind of on the cusp between being a secondary and a tertiary market at this point in terms of the national food scene. So it's difficult to find people who are dedicated to come to work every day, front of the house and back of the house.
Yeah, eventually it could get there, but...
No, but I think it speaks to the conversation about how you, as a chef, restaurant owner in Raleigh, North Carolina, with the type of restaurant you run, has to run a kitchen and be the boss, so to speak. Which also goes back to the earlier conversation about the chef and restaurant owner using two sides of the brain, because you're not only a creative, but you're also a business owner and a boss.
Yeah, problem solver and all the other things that come along with it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, absolutely.
One thing I want to touch on, though, you said, we're probably never going to win a Michelin star. I can't speak to that. I've seen your restaurant. I've never eaten there, so shame on me. But one of these days I will. But you were awarded 4.5 stars by Greg Cox back in 2012, which I think is the highest rate. I don't think, has he ever given 5 stars out?
I don't believe there's been a 5-star. I'm not positive, but I know that in Greg Cox's most recent awarding of
Restaurant of the Year.
Crawford & Son being the Restaurant of the Year, that he had only given 4.5 stars to
3 restaurants last year.
3 restaurants, and I think that might be the top. And so he's done that for Pools in the Day and Death and Taxes and Crawford & Son and the Umstead, or Herons, or Herons, as your wife might say. Yeah. And, of course, the aforementioned Mandolin. So, yeah, don't sell yourself too short, man. I've dined there a few times, and every time I've come out of there, I just go, man, it's kind of like that was the joke I had the other day when I left Jay Betsky's. I went, every time I leave Jay Betsky's, I always say, why am I not eating here more often? It's so good. But same thing with Mandolin. Like, one of the best experiences that I can tell people when they're always like, where should you go? I always say, go to the bar at Mandolin and get some food, because the dining experience and the beverage experience, and plus just it's just a cool vibe. It's kind of casual, but yet it's a beautiful environment. So you're like, you kind of expect it to be fucking awesome, and it ends up being fucking awesome. Cool. Yeah. So it's cool, but it also is laid back. It's not pretentious in any way. So, no, I love the environment. It's cool.
Well, being a kind of, let's say, just new to the situation, I think people, maybe if they hear about being like, oh, yeah, that restaurant's really good. It's a neighborhood restaurant, and I don't think they realize, like, the level of sophistication and ingredients that probably is going on in there. Just from an outside perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think personally, I'm probably a little bit understated. Like, I'm not,
you're not one of those like beating your chest, come to my restaurant. It's awesome.
Yeah, exactly. But I think we've carved out a nice little niche, and obviously, getting a good review from Greg Cox, like I told my staff, obviously, after a brief celebration and lots of pats on the back, hey, like, not a lot of people can say they did this.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, this is also, it's a marathon. It's not a sprint. That's one person's opinion. And obviously he's a very influential person. He's cultured, well-traveled, all this stuff. But, at the end of the day, we need to do that for every guest on a nightly basis.
Well, now he set your bar high too.
Yeah. Right. And that's considerably more daunting, rather than having to cook for one person and make sure they have an exemplary experience. To have to do that for, 60, 70, 80, 140 people on a given night and make sure they all have that experience, that's a lot more difficult. And also, part of that the review really kind of focused on some of the like more refined elements, and even some of the price of a few dishes. So I think even with some of that information, it set the bar even higher, where people came in expecting one thing, and then we still have we've got chicken and waffles on the menu,
which is a staple at your place and is delicious. So
and I hold that chicken and waffles up against any fried chicken anywhere, and I'm a fried chicken connoisseur. So I think our fried chicken's really good, but at the same time, people are going out to have a dining experience, and they see that, and they're kind of like, like why is that there? Talked to I think Vivian Howard told me once, not to name drop, but about same thing when she got a lot of really good buzz about the Chef and the Farmer, like before her show and everything, and then people would like make the trip out there, and it's it's really good Southern food, but they were expecting white tablecloth and like this this Manhattan Michelin star dining experience, and that's not what she does.
Right.
So I think sometimes you get these reviews kind of gushing about how great everything is, and people get different expectations than what you are. And we never set out to be fine dining per se. I almost think fine dining is more of a the service experience.
Sure.
And we're I think we're very refined, good, great food, well sourced, a lot of technique in the kitchen with attentive service. But I think our atmosphere was always meant to be kind of inviting and relaxed, or hospitable. Stuffy fine dining does not play in Raleigh, North Carolina at all.
And I think even on a global level, especially since the recession of 2008, that it's been less and less those expectations of I need to go to a white tablecloth restaurant in order to have a great meal. There's even more to the point, I think it's like all the kind of fun to find those hole in the wall places, even less kind of impressive in terms of ambiance than you have, but that have amazing food and authentic food.
Sure.
So I feel like those worlds have super melded. But definitely there's still a certain set of clientele that has their mindset that, I need to go to X kind of restaurant to have X kind of meal.
Well,
right.
as an owner, as a proprietor, whether you're going to be fine dining or not, it's like a very distinct difference. Like, we are intending to do X or Y, and if you're at the Fearrington House or Heron's, those are fine dining establishments, but that are kind of designed to be that excellence and that high level. But as like the restaurants we mentioned earlier, like Pools or Crawford and Son or Mandolin, it's all about extremely high technique, really great sourcing, but then a comfortability,
absolutely,
and hospitality, which that's kind of what most people want anyways.
I agree.
I'll go to Fearrington or Heron's for an anniversary or a big event, or if some guy's spotting some supplier from out of town's gonna wheel and deal, great. But I would rather just take a buddy of mine after out of town, or my wife and I on a date night to a Mandolin or a Crawford Son or whatever, because that just feels good and it's comfortable. But really, like, the satisfaction of eating there is really going to be on a no different level, I feel, than if you were at a Fearrington or a Heron's. It's all just about how you feel at the end of the day. Does it taste good? Is it Phil? What's his name? Phil. He's got the Netflix show. He did Everybody Loves Raymond. That's a great new.
The Robert character in Raymond?
No, he's the creator of Everybody Loves Raymond. Phil Rosenthal. He's doing a Netflix show about world travel and eating, and he kind of talked about this on his show. And he's like, I don't care how high level concept your restaurant is or how whatever, does the food taste good?
Yeah,
and it's like, it doesn't matter. So like, if you can get chicken and waffles at Mandolin, or you can get chicken and waffles at Dinah's and Roscoe's chicken and waffle in like South Central LA,
right?
It doesn't really matter what the ambiance is. Does the chicken and the waffle taste delicious? And if the answer is yes, then great, you've achieved your goal. Kind of everything else is just window dressing.
Well, that's what Paul Greco used to say. Paul Greco, who used to run the wine program at Gramercy Tavern and now is well known for Terroir Wine Bar in New York City, but he used to say, wine, for me to buy it, most important factor, does it have the yummy factor? Is it yummy?
Yeah.
And really, that at the end of the day, that's the most important thing.
You can go on about the barnyard and the petrol and all that stuff, but it also has to be good and have those funky elements if you're into that.
Yeah.
So at the end. Well, let's get deeper into Mandolin, and let's get deeper into your whole philosophy about food and all, because you touched upon produce and you touched upon availability and sourcing. And I know, but I want you to tell everybody else that sourcing is really important to you and farming is really important to you. And you're connected to farms and even a farm, most specific with Mandolin, right? And so how did this come to be, and kind of walk us through, like, let us know like why it was so important for you to kind of connect and have your own farm.
Yeah, I'd love to. I think most of the restaurants I worked at, right out of culinary school, most of them had some sort of either an herb garden or a vegetable garden. Fearrington has, they've got some gardens, growing some produce and some herbs. And growing up, even when we were young, living off Durant Road in North Raleigh, we always had a vegetable garden, usually, tomatoes and eggplant and stuff like that. So, even from a young age, I was, it was impressed upon me that food generally tastes better when you're growing it yourself or you're close to the source.
Yeah.
So, I mean, like that was, probably 5 or 6 eating a tomato sandwich out of the garden in August with, some Hellman's mayonnaise on just white bread. And I was like, this is better than any tomato sandwich I've ever had in a restaurant. So I think that was imprinted upon me at a young age. And then working in restaurants that had this component. And coming out of culinary school, farm to table was just kind of becoming a thing.
Sure.
When I moved to New York, upstate, the property I was on in Earl West, we put in a garden from ground zero, put up the fence, tilled it, planted it, harvested it. So I'd always had that component. When we started Mandolin, I don't think we had the time to start with, but pretty shortly thereafter, Lizzie was like, why don't, your parents, they've got that big, chunk of property off Durant Road. My mom used to have horses, so there's horse pastures. So well-fertilized, nitrogen-rich soil sitting there, fallow essentially. So my wife kind of gave me the nudge. She's kind of comes up with the good ideas, and then she makes me execute them. So anyways, we went out there in the first year. I think it was 2013, a couple years after we'd opened, and we, it was pretty much her and I out there tilling this, planting it, putting up the fence, doing all this, and had a decent yield, but it's a pretty big project. I was probably a little more ambitious than I should have been or could have been. And then each year it grows a little bit, gets a little bit bigger. I've hired somebody out there full time to manage it. A girl, Grace Kilroy, went to NC State, so she's out there managing it. I'm out there a lot. And, essentially we were trying to grow stuff that we, maybe didn't have as good of access to here as I wanted to, some unique ingredients, things that could save us money, things that are kind of expensive.
Yeah, sure.
Like sunchokes, Jerusalem artichokes, you order those from Purveyor, they're like $7 a pound. They grow like weeds,
Yeah. Andrea Weigel talked about how she planted Jerusalem artichokes in her backyard, and they
get rid of them.
Exactly.
Right. So
you have to figure out how to can them.
They're delicious.
And
so things like that, and each year we just gotten a little bit better. We had a huge yield last year. We're putting in a high tunnel this year and growing a bunch of tomatoes indoors, so hopefully extending our season there. We've got about 50 chickens out there, so pretty much all of our brunch eggs at Mandolin are farm fresh.
Wow.
From our chickens. And then also it kind of adds into the sustainability aspect of the restaurant. I mean, we have we've got a really small food waste footprint because almost all of our food waste is going out there to be composted and added back to the garden to grow more food, and then we're using scraps from vegetables, bread to feed to the chickens. We use the chicken eggs. We're composting those eggs, so kind of everything forms this nice, cool, circle of life, if you will.
Have you guys been able to put the honey farm in there yet, or
we haven't. I need to get together with Alice and get something planned, because that's another kind of thing that we, another component we'd like to have out there is some beehives.
Yeah.
That's definitely on the to-do list. We'd love to get some bees out there, but
Alice Hinman of Apiopolis, and then we all worked at Chidi Kumar, and you and Eric Montagny, and who am I missing?
Drew.
And Drew, Drew over at Stanbury, did that awesome Apiopolis dinner over at Standard Foods in the backyard. And that was just
with Jones Von Drill wines, right?
With Jones Von Drill wines, that's right.
Killer dinner, really
that
good
was
stuff.
Beautiful too. Like the weather couldn't have been better. The sun was setting. It was just
out there by the garden.
That was
standard,
perfect little thing. But that also speaks to not only are you so concerned about your own environment and what you're cooking with, but you're also a community member of this culinary scene. And I've known that through the various places I've worked, and then I just like getting out and about and going to food events, and I just see Sean Fowler's name is on every single one of those. I don't know if maybe it's just you're tired of being in your kitchen all the time. You just need to get out and do something. I would shudder to think it's more about you like being involved in the community and being a representative of this culinary neighborhood, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, obviously, a lot of this stuff is for good causes. I think being obviously being a business owner, being a neighbor of a father, all those things are great things to be. But I also think being kind of plugged into your community and doing good stuff for the people around you. I think that's an important kind of part of our ethos at Mandolin, and I think a lot of chefs share that, especially nowadays and in Raleigh. And then also, just working with your peers. I get stuck in my kitchen, cooking, not the same food, but kind of the same style of food. Working with my guys, my team, and being able to get out and kind of share, collaborate, learn from other people in the community. I think it's great. I mean, there's a lot of people doing really cool stuff. And I think, a lot of times you get tunnel vision when you're working in your own business. And then when you kind of lift your head up and open your eyes a little bit, there's, you can really enjoy it. And then also, just kind of the the fraternity, the social
Camaraderie,
aspect.
yeah.
I mean, pretty much everybody I know of who's cooking in this town are pretty solid people. Good people. I think there's probably a few exceptions. I won't name them, but
you'll name them off.
You know who
mic.
you are. No,
is there, not to put you on the spot, but is there a situation or scenario that comes to mind where you were cooking in an environment with other chefs and maybe you just saw something, maybe it's even just like a process that that person might have had, or even a technique you saw that you're like, I got to throw that in the back of my brain and steal that for some other day?
Well, I mean, chefs, we're notorious thieves. So, sure. I mean, we pretty much everything we do is lifted from somewhere through inspiration or whatever. But, I don't think I've necessarily bit something that I put on the menu directly, but one cool thing I saw was doing a dinner over at Counting House with Mike Lee and Josh DeCarolis from
Mothers and Sons.
From Mother and Sons, and then Thomas Card, formerly from the Fearrington House, now the chef over at 21C, and we were and Mike Lee did this pork belly dish where. And I'm forgetting the process, but essentially the outcome was a braised pork belly, and he did some curing process on the skin, left the skin on, threw it in the oven, so the skin puffed up to basically chicharrone consistency, but still attached to the pork belly. So I mean, it was like serious crispy skin pork belly, like I've never seen.
Yeah,
like the bubbly crispy pork rinds out of the skin, still attached to the belly, and it was essentially almost like two different cooking processes to produce this effect. And I probably should have taken better notes because I would totally bite that one if I could remember how to do it.
Well, Mike's such a giving guy. He never ceases to. He'll probably just tell you, or
and he did tell us because like me and Thomas and Josh were like, that's that's cool. Like that's pretty badass. But so anyways, like pretty much anytime you get in a room with a bunch of chefs, you're going to see some cool stuff or taste something.
So did that manifest itself into a new dish or something at Mandolin?
No, not particularly.
Okay.
But
just some food. It's food for thought, pun intended.
It's in the back of my brain.
Kind of opens your eyes up to when you're thinking, man, it'd be really cool if this pork belly I'm making had a crispy component to it.
Yeah.
That's cool.
So but there's this area. I mean, there's such a wealth of talent, wealth of knowledge, and then different perspectives too. Like seeing different types of cuisine. I mean, I grew up eating a lot of Southern food, a lot of kind of locally grown ingredients. I had two Southern grandmothers and, ate lots of yeast rolls and biscuits and stuff like that. And then, most of my training was more kind of French fine dining, with a little bit of kind of international influence. But then, seeing what all these, other types of cuisines, what other people are doing, it's eye-opening. It's cool to me. Like I love eating, I love going out and eating, Vietnamese food or going to Bidamanda and, having Laotian food and eating things that I don't know how to cook because it's fun. Like I've had plenty of fried chicken and biscuits and I love that too, but it's cool going out and eating Cheaty's food and, trying flavors that, I wouldn't have come up with or I'm not familiar with. Like that's still the fun part about eating and cooking is, you're always learning, there's tons of new experiences to be had.
Yeah. And that is again, I mean, we preach it all the time, but it's about the community here. And not only just in the Triangle, but you talk about Charlotte or you talk about Kinston or Wilmington now and Asheville. It's like everybody's adding to this pot, this salad bowl, this true melting pot of cuisine and everything. It's where you don't so much get that in a market that's already established, but here everybody's willing to try everybody else's and kind of learn from that and push the scene and North Carolina as a whole together, which is just, it's why we're doing what we're doing. So it's cool.
Yeah.
I wanted to finish the story of Mandolin before we get out of here.
Sure.
And so you're finished in New York and something pulls you back, or obviously Fearrington House. But then in starting Mandolin, were you intentional in like, is it the restaurant that you kind of, I know that your wife Lizzie was instrumental also in creating the concept and the design and stuff, but is it basically what you intended, like a seasonal neighborhood, excellent restaurant that happened to be your childhood stomping grounds?
Yeah. I mean, I think it was initially kind of exactly what I was going for, but it's evolved over time. Like I think at the end of the day, like I think to start with, I was probably shooting a little bit higher than, maybe what my audience was ready for. I think we were probably kind of lumped into fine dining. Like when we opened, we had white tablecloths because I like the aesthetic of it. I thought it looked cool, but it, not necessarily because I wanted it to turn people off or for them to think it was fine dining. And then after a while, we kind of lost the white tablecloths and kind of, made it a little more approachable. People didn't feel like they had to get dressed to the nines to come eat with us. They could come in jeans and a t-shirt.
Because you don't want to be a special occasion restaurant.
No, exactly. And I so and we didn't have a bar menu to start with. Lizzie was for probably the first year she was telling me we got to put a burger on the bar menu. We got to do a burger. And then after a while, like I was listening, my guests would start telling me they're like, why don't you have a burger? Why don't you have a bar menu? So after a while, you kind of stop thinking about like what do I want to do, like what is my concept for this restaurant, and you start listening to the people who are living in the neighborhood or coming in supporting you on a weekly, monthly basis and be like, if these people want a burger on the, like, why don't I just put a burger on the menu? It's going to be a really good burger.
Yeah.
And so I think we've kind of made it more approachable. We've added brunch. We've got these wonderful bar plates we do Sunday through Thursday, $15, mix and match, kind of create your own meal. It's casual, it's quick, it's it's mandolin food. It's farm fresh produce and great proteins for I think a really good bargain. So I think we made it so people didn't feel like we were quite as stuffy. We kind of relaxed our edges. The food's probably simplified a little bit. It's more just kind of ingredient forward, ingredient driven. Like we find I just find good ingredients and I make them taste the best they can. We're cooking all of our meats on a wood-fired grill, which I think imparts a very unique flavor. I mean, like, hickory smoke and beef or pork are kind of like, that's a flavor combination made in heaven.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people lose that cooking over gas. And, no offense to anybody else, but I think cooking meat over wood fire, just, it's become kind of vogue these days. But I also think that, it's a really unique kind of, well-developed flavor that people really enjoy. I mean, we don't do that much to our steaks. I mean, we have these beautiful kind of, black Angus, grass-fed, bone-in ribeyes that we grill, and it's pretty much salt and pepper and wood smoke on there, and that's all it is. And people are like, "This is the best steak I've ever had," and I was like, "We don't do much to it." It's
that's why it's delicious.
It's good meat, and it's good, it's good wood smoke, and it's salt and pepper, and it's delicious. So I think our food's probably simplified a little bit. It's I think I've listened to my guests. Like at the end of the day, like I cook for myself because I enjoy it, but I think what gets lost a lot of times is the fact that we do what we do for the people in there dining. It's not about my ego on the plate. It's about making people happy when they leave there. And I think it in some areas, and I think I lost sight of that for a little bit when you're trying to come up with this mind-bending, creative flavor combination to put on a plate, and then people are kind of lukewarm about it, and you're like, at the end of the day, it's not about me. It's about it's about the customer experience.
They didn't really need the octopus served in a sweetbread on top of a bone marrow.
They just didn't know they needed it. And they just weren't there yet.
I don't know, and maybe this is an obvious thing, maybe it's on the nose, but I was gonna ask this question, but I'm gonna go out on a limb and guess the answer. You've got a Grateful Dead shirt on. I was wondering about where the name mandolin comes from, but can I connect the dots to say that David Grisman has something to do with the name?
I mean, I've listened to a lot of David Grisman. Yeah, sure.
A phenomenal mandolin player. Played with Jerry Garcia.
Played with Jerry, banjo player.
Well documented as a Deadhead. No doubt, a huge fan of the Grateful Dead. But where did the name mandolin come from?
Well, I think the connection between good food and good music was always there. Like we, even from when I was little, we'd be barbecuing out in the back deck, and Johnny Cash or something would be blaring from the the record player inside. So we always had like some. My best memories were always food and music related. Usually the two of them together. So it was just kind of a logical. Like I don't play an instrument, but I grew up listening to a lot of bluegrass and a lot of kind of roots American style music. And then also I think it's the mandolin. It's an old world instrument, came from Europe, but has almost been assimilated into like Southern mountain music. It's almost become an American music because of the style of musics that it's generated or inspired, bluegrass, roots, Americana. So I think in some ways, not unlike my food, this is probably a little more cerebral look at it, but a lot of my stuff is kind of old world inspired, classical French, maybe some Italian influences and stuff. But then, I think at its core, it's also very Southern. So, I think that instrument kind of embodied that.
That's a perfect answer. I love that.
Yeah, and plus it is a instrument used in cooking as well.
Absolutely.
So
And
it kind of ties
I did
everything
not
together.
mean the food pun,
Yeah,
but
I
yes,
figured that.
it's certainly there.
If one ever wants to mangle their fingers up and lose tips of their fingers, please use a mandolin.
I just did that the other day. Like
of course you did. Everybody does.
After doing it for as long, like I hadn't done it in years.
It's a death trap.
Yeah, it's
It
crazy.
should be outlawed in kitchens.
And they give you that guard on there, and it's the first thing everybody throws away.
Yeah, no one wants
don't throw away the guard,
I'm
everybody.
not going to need this. Yeah.
One last question in terms of intention and mandolin, and being that it was intentional old world kind of thought process going in there. The wine list has always been sort of a cut above, let's say, what would be the typical neighborhood, very excellent restaurant. Totally. And I think early on you brought in Charles Kirkwood, who established a list to do that. So how was that I guess, well, I'm speaking for you, but was that intentional?
Yeah, I mean, I always, I think kind of the trifecta of having like a really good restaurant is obviously the food's got to be great.
Yeah.
The service has got to be great, and then the beverage program's got to be on point. Cocktails and wine list, and a lot of restaurants get one or two of those correct, but there's not a lot that kind of marry all three of them seamlessly and well.
Yeah.
So, my buddy Charles Kirkwood, who I'd worked with in New York, and probably one of the, him and Max Cass, two of the, the best wine minds I've known. I had him come in and help me up, and he designed the list, and just knew a lot about wine, brought in some pretty obscure stuff, and a lot, kind of limited production, limited allocations, and really kind of getting some value driven wine. Sometimes you guys know the wines that people are the least familiar with are some of the best values. You can get things that are, score really high, that have great flavors, go great with food, that are, aren't these big marquee brand names.
Absolutely.
And sneak those onto the list and share them with people. It's almost like a cool little secret, because you only get a couple cases, and it's better than what they've been paying twice as much to drink.
That's the value of a good wine director.
Exactly. Yeah. So he's done that. I've had a couple of other people in that position to carry the torch. Just recently, I brought on Emmett Hassan, who ran the beverage program over at Vidrio. Came down from Maryland, and he's taken over the cocktail program and the wine list. And I really think he's kind of just picked up that torch and ran with it. I think he's doing some really cool things with the wine program, and I think our cocktail program's about the best it's been. Some, kind of taking the same approach we do to our cuisine, kind of an ingredient-driven seasonal cocktail list, using a lot of the same ingredients we're using in the kitchen, we're using in drinks.
That's always great when the cocktail program and the food program are working harmoniously.
Absolutely.
Yeah, one last one before we're done. You also make some barbecue sauces too.
I do.
Mandolin sauces. You got the Blue-Eyed Pete, and you got the Mr. Souls, right?
Yeah, that's
like a vinegar. Well, Blue-Eyed Pete's more the Kansas City barbecue, and the vinegar based is the Mr. Souls.
Right. And that was kind of a side project. I'd been making sauce to put on pigs for years, and had just been getting a lot of people saying, where can I get this? Can you sell this to me? And after courting up so many of these in delis and giving it to guests in the dining room, I was like,
now you got to pay.
We need to now we need to put this in a bottle and start selling it. So just kind of did it as a side project. We sell it at Mandolin. They've got it at Raleighwood Provision, Standard Foods, grocery stores, Taylor's Wine Shop. So a handful of places around town. Southern Seasons. We're probably in a handful of retailers around the state. So
that's cool, man.
Yeah, you can add a little mandolin sauce to your home barbecue.
Yeah, I've used the Blue-Eyed Boy or Blue-Eyed Pete. I'm sorry, because you've got fresh blueberries, blackberries in the sauce.
That's right. Yeah,
that's a very North Carolina way to go, and that's pretty cool. Matt's got a nice bag over here that he wants to give because
speaking of giving people gifts and stuff, and actually we have a gift for you.
Yeah, guests of the NCF&B starting now in 2018, all of our guests receive these great, it's a gift bag, and it's collected from people like yourself that make and produce North Carolina products as well. So there's some Social House vodka coming in from Kinston. You're holding right now a 42 and Lawrence special blend. The cool part is if you open the note on the coffee, Jeremy over at 42 and Lawrence wrote you a personal note, and he actually put that blend together based off of your flavors and what you do at Mandolin.
Very cool.
So
That's
fun
awesome.
stuff. Our good friend, at the day we were recording this morning, today is the opening day for Michael's English Muffins brick and mortar place. I had breakfast there with the kids, and that's some Michael's English Muffins baked this morning and delivered to you.
I love it. Those are awesome.
Yeah, so it's fun. It's nice to have the community come around, and then there's obviously some swag. You throw on a nice NCF&B hat when you go out to the next Hurricanes game, like we bumped into each other
That's
that
right,
one time.
yeah, a few weeks ago.
Thank you for being here. Matt, what do you got?
No, Sean, it's been inspirational. And let's make that ski trip happen to Jackson Hole, because I've never been there. But otherwise, everybody else out there, go to Mandolin, find out what Chef Sean Fowler's doing, and eat and drink merrily.
Guests of the NCF&B podcast receive a swag bag including gifts from these rockstar North Carolina producers: Larry's Beans and 42 and Lawrence, Social House Vodka, and Michael's English Muffins. And we'll be at Triangle Wine Company in Cary, Saturday, March 3rd, to hack your cocktail party. Let us show you some of our tricks of pairing food and wine and make your own cocktails in 3 easy steps. Check our website, ncfbpodcast.com, for details. Don't miss it. And join us next week when we chat with Pine Top Distillery. That's next time, right here on the NCF&B Podcast.